Well, Brandy, welcome to the Red Chair. I am so glad to have you with us today to hear a little bit about your backstory, who you are, and to tell everybody really like who is Brandy behind the amazing business and investment company that you've built. Brandy, take us to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, a little bit about who Brandy was way back then.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. Happy to
Absolutely.
be here. Gosh, more about Brandy. Well, I'm actually from a small town outside of Manhattan, Kansas.
Okay.
So yeah, I kind of grew up more a country girl, and later moved to the big city. Yeah, those early years, it was just more kind of that country living. Our family story is probably a little different than some. We grew up and have a couple brothers that are, a little bit younger than myself. So I was the oldest child.
Of course.
So I was kind of more that strong-willed, always getting in trouble. It was funny, kindergarten, I actually got sent to the principal's office 4 times. So
Really?
I was a very argumentative, like, strong-willed child, so I feel bad for my mom.
What were you passionate about to get sent down there for that?
So I would argue with the teacher what the difference between a square and a circle was, and I remember I would stand up and I'm like, "That is not a circle, that's a square." And so she did not have the patience for a kindergarten teacher, especially someone like myself.
And you were probably right. She probably clearly
Totally.
drew.
Yeah, yeah. I was probably wrong most of the time. But yeah, the principal actually drove me home on several occasions
Oh my
after
gosh.
school.
That's great.
So yeah, so that was kind of my childhood. Interestingly enough, and not to kind of jump into this, but we ended up coming to Kansas City due to my father's job loss.
Okay.
So my parents actually had gone through a bankruptcy, and that was a very interesting experience.
Mm,
Money was always something that my family, struggled with, the family finances, and definitely great parents, great people, very hard workers. But they had always, up until that point, worked a job. And so it was the layoffs, the economy. And this was, in the early 80s. So if I date myself, but yeah, it was difficult. I remember we would walk in the sunflower fields, and my mom just crying because we found, $2 on the ground. And she's like, we can buy milk. So we went through that phase where we lost all of our utilities.
mm.
So we, would have to hand wash our clothes in the tub, and we'd take baths outside, in the kiddie pools. And we had those little old fashioned lanterns. I don't know if you remember those where you'd fill them up with oil and they had kind of the little wicks.
Yeah.
And so we'd carry those around the house. And, they always tried to make it, I don't say special, but, an adventure
Yeah.
when I was younger. And it was very impressionable to me at that time. I was 6 years old because it really set the tone for my adulthood and things that I wanted for my family and things I didn't. At that age, I used to write out pretend checks of how much money, when I became an adult, I'm going to make $1 million,
Yeah.
or what my last name would be, who I'd marry. And so at a young age, I was always very aware of more adult things
Yeah.
because of it. But
You
yeah,
grow
that
up a little
really
quick.
I did,
Yeah.
and thank goodness I had a great family structure. It just was the financial part was something that was always, was kind of our family history of what we struggled with.
Yeah. And it sounds like too, like that the upbringing of having to work hard really has shaped a lot of who you've become. Obviously that has been instilled in you that you work really hard, that you grind it out, that you'll do whatever it takes to get those things, just like that value system that was really instilled in you and your family.
Yeah, I think it's an awareness, and then you see, well, how do I want my life to be? And the work ethic,
Yeah.
But what it also taught me too was, the difference of working for someone else versus for yourself.
Yes.
And later on, both my parents owned their own business. And so to see that transformation between being an employee to being a business owner, Even though it's a lot
Right.
more work, a lot more stress, there was more freedom in that. We can obviously get to that, but yeah, it was very impressionable at a young age.
So when did you guys move from Western Can or the mid-Kansas area to Kansas City?
So I was probably 7 years old, and actually we lived in my grandma's basement.
Okay.
And so, that took a while for my family to get back up on their feet. So, it's interesting enough. We always were renters. We lived in their basement, and then we moved to an apartment, and then it was a duplex, and another duplex. And so, I think because of the financial issues that my parents had faced, not only dealing with that, but actually home ownership and buying a home, it was something that they were very nervous about
Okay.
doing. So it's interesting to be in real estate. And I kind of joke, I have this habit of buying houses all the time. I don't know if that stems from my childhood of not living in a home, per se. But I was always very embarrassed because I didn't want to have friends over, because I was a renter, we didn't have a home like all the other kids, in school. And it's interesting because when it comes to investing, now I buy up all those homes and I'm like, they weren't that spectacular at all,
Right, right. And it just gives you a whole different perspective on where you were and then what you've been through
It
now.
is, so yeah.
So take us up to, so you're growing up. What happens next, Brandy? What tell me about school, college, kind of that your next piece of your journey.
Yeah. So my parents, bless their heart, they're always focused on, there's kind of a saying, they're focused on getting us to heaven, not Harvard. So it was a very spiritual household.
Okay.
We went to church 3, 4 times a week, twice on Sundays.
Yep.
And so I grew up that route. School was actually not stressed for us growing up, which I don't know if that was a good or bad thing. I think there's definitely a place, for higher education, for being an entrepreneur. Though I'm really glad growing up, I never wanted a job.
Yeah.
There wasn't a career that I'm like, hey, I'm going to be a nurse or I'm going to go into this field. I was very apprehensive clocking in and clocking out of having someone tell me when I can go on vacation or if I could take off, to take my kids to the field trip. And so I kind of equated working in corporate America with just being tied down and not
Mm,
having freedom.
sure.
So entrepreneurship was always something that was very intriguing to me. So I was like, well, why go to college? Why go? Because I don't want a job.
Yeah,
And granted, it has its place,
for sure.
connections. There's a lot of great things about it. It just wasn't stressed in my household.
No, I mean,
So
obviously.
yeah, now I will say it's funny, and this is not I would say a brag by any means, but the people in my life that have degrees or masters or PhDs, it's funny because I do have an associate's. I went to Johnson County Community College for more years than I probably should have, but I make more than the people that have the degrees. And the more degrees they have, the less that a lot of them in our family make.
Yeah,
Isn't that interesting?
it is so interesting.
Yeah. Now, again, I don't have, plastic
Right.
surgeons or doctors in the family, but, just for that mainstream corporate America, yeah, the less degrees, the more money it seems.
No, you're 100% right. I remember thinking the same thing with some of my family members going, "Okay, that's interesting. I'm in real estate and you're doing this." And it's interesting how not every career rewards the same. And
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur and business owner, you can really create whatever level of financial independence and freedom and security you choose to get.
Yeah, and that's what I love about real estate.
Yeah.
That's what I love about entrepreneurship. And granted, there's seasons where it's, so difficult
Right.
and the money is not there, it's a grind. And yet I wanted something where I could have that flexibility of having a family and still being able to feel like I was, I say, in control a little
Mhm.
bit. And I think that's just because of a lack of security growing up.
Sure.
I took on that need to be more independent when it came to finances and understanding, how finances work more so than just a paycheck or a commission.
Right. And that really stemmed from, how you grew up.
Mhm.
Where for you, Brandy, was that idea that real estate could be that next right piece for you?
Yeah, so real estate was never something that I had considered. I actually learned a lot of business skills. I got involved in a multi-level marketing company, which I know a lot of people try, and it was pretty hardcore. But they taught a lot about business, public speaking, your team's development. And I did have success with that. I actually had some offices in Omaha, Des Moines, and Kansas City.
Okay.
And so I had large teams. And yet there was just something about it. I made more money off subleasing commercial space and having office space than I did in the actual business. But it was funny because during this time, my father actually became a home builder, and so he started that career when I was in college.
Okay.
So, they finally decided to build their own house, and they started off with these, I don't wanna say, like, prefab kind of homes,
Mhm.
and, it was years of being away, and I was in this MLM company, and I was a little discouraged, it was a lot of work. It was kind of, you were resurrecting people and always trying to recruit and just a lot of things you couldn't control. And he said, "Hey," he goes, "I would love for you to come back to Kansas City and help me with the home building process." He goes, "You need to get your real estate license." And I thought, well, I'm happy to help you
Mm.
with the model homes or whatever you need with clients because I was in sales. But getting my real estate license and selling real estate was something I was definitely not interested in. And I didn't understand how you even got started. Now, I will say it was a blessing in disguise for me because I hadn't finished, college. And there's not a lot of jobs that you could get, unless you finish your
Sure.
higher education, just because they won't hire you without it. And yet I thought, okay, well, I'll get my license so I can help him, but I definitely don't want to be in real estate. I don't want to be a realtor. So I moved back to
Famous
Kansas
last
City,
words, right?
right? I came back to Kansas City. I got my license. I started with a small brokerage
Mhm.
where my broker, bless his heart, he also had a mortgage company. So he really was kind of like fend for yourself. He wasn't in a building phase in the
Sure.
company. But my parents knew him. They're like, "Hey, get started with him." And it was funny because every time I would ask him a question, he'd say, "Did you read the contract?" He would point to the paragraph and go, "Did you read the contract? Did you read this?" He's like, "Go back and read it, and if you have a question, come back." He's like, "But I think you'll figure it out." And so that's kinda how my real estate career started. I got my first commission, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is more money than I had made doing,
Yeah.
my other career." And I did serve tables. So I was, serving tables in a restaurant for a long time. I did that while I was building my other business because it was, fast cash. So that was something that I had done for quite a while as well. And, yeah, I started in real estate.
Tell us a little bit about that first year for you in real estate.
Oh gosh, it was horrible.
Yeah?
I mean, it was nice to have big checks
Yeah.
coming in, but that was clients that my broker had. It was
Okay.
kinda like, "Hey, help me out. I'll
Or
give
show
you"
them. Yeah.
Yeah, "I'll give you the first time home buyers." I remember touring the first home, with a couple of clients, and it was my broker's, clients that he had graciously given to me, and they said, "Does this house have a sump pump in it?" And we're in the basement, and I'm like, "What in the heck's a sump pump?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm looking around, and I'm just kind of winging it,
Yeah.
I'm making stuff up, and one of the questions I would say is, "Hey, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I'll find out for you." And so I learned a lot that first year. It was touring with inspectors and just doing anything I could to learn,
Sure.
but I didn't really have that coaching skill.
Mm.
So that first year was rough. The first 5 years was rough,
What was it kinda like financially for you? Ballpark.
Yeah, so I think I started making off around 40,000 a year, and it probably took me a couple of years to do that. And then it went to something where I was making about 80,000 a
Mhm.
year. I was not someone who hit a home run when I first started. And at that time too, I was getting married and
Yeah.
we were trying to figure things out. We lived in a little 2-bedroom, 800 square foot, house that we were renting. And I just thought, you know what? I could see real estate as being something that I could do. I could use my skills. My skill set pretty much is I love negotiating, I love problem solving.
Mhm.
And I could see how real estate benefit or I could benefit from real
Yeah,
estate
yeah.
for that. So it was difficult. And it wasn't until I actually joined this office that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting more of the training and the skills to really further real estate. I had thought about getting into the investment world. I watched all these, house flipping
Oh,
shows and
yeah, they make it look so easy.
how they do. Oh my goodness. And being in construction, I started learning the ropes. I started learning
Okay.
how to do lighting takeoffs. I would help with all the model homes. So I would meet with the designers and we would start going through, square footage and what tile looked the best, but maybe was $3 a square foot instead of $8 a square foot that we could fit into budgets. So that experience really helped me
Mhm.
to launch from real estate agent to more of a real estate investor
Investor.
because I know that's a scary,
For sure.
switch for some people because you really need to know the numbers.
Yeah.
And being a more introverted person, I was good with numbers, again, problem solving.
Yeah.
I always have a saying that the amount of money you make is really based on your ability to solve problems.
That's right.
So for me, it was looking at situations, figuring out the end goal. How do we get this accomplished? And because of my background in sales before, we learned a lot about personality types. We learned a lot about closing the deal, negotiating, building teams.
Sure.
And so that did help me when it came to a real estate business. I just didn't realize how much lead generation was involved in real estate.
Right.
That was challenging
And
for
I think
me.
that's the piece that most new agents getting started, they don't realize that it's a daily activity that you really have to commit to.
It is. Yeah. And it's learning how to build that. And then once you understand it, then hiring people or leveraging.
Correct.
Sometimes I think new agents leverage too early,
Mhm.
whether it's hiring like a transaction coordinator or someone. It's like, hey, you really need to know your contracts. You need to know your business. You need to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and you gotta be able to at least understand it all.
Absolutely. Understand what you're doing before you pass it off on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was very challenging. I had a rough start. I wish I was a home run success, like, "Hey, I sold $10,000,000 my first year or 100 homes in my first 3 years," and that just wasn't the case.
Well, it's slow and steady progress.
Yeah.
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 And that's such a good look at your business, especially over the years.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit, Brandy. Obviously, you've transitioned a lot of your business from agent to production into investing. Tell me when you kind of had that aha, like, you know what, this is a big chunk of what I want to do.
Yeah. So I think the shift from real estate agent to more investor, I was always intrigued again from the TV shows and things that you saw. I went to a conference where they try to sign you up for like a $30,000 coaching, package. And I went to one of those and I was seeing people that had freedom, flexibility.
Yeah,
They seemed to be making tons of money. And for me, the security of money, that's just always been, again, something that, was always important to me. And so I went to this seminar and I was like, "Hey, I wanna start investing." Being in real estate, it gives you that unfair advantage,
exactly.
As you know, being a real estate investor yourself, you kinda build yourself with the skill set, the negotiation. I love to hunt and to find deals. So it kind of fit in perfectly. And then I looked at my construction background that I was learning. I thought, okay, this is a comfortable next step, a transition. So I went to this conference. It was 2014 and then signed up for the program. invested the money in it, and I would take the classes, I would take the courses. I was a professional student, but I wasn't taking action.
Oh, yeah.
So I was so scared and fearful to take action because it's a big commitment,
Sure.
you know? And right now I was just in the phase of having enough income where I felt a little bit of security. I was building up a little bit of a savings account, but I knew that there had to be, more. And so with real estate investing, gosh, it took me a while. It was always looking at deals and then going, "Oh, you know what? I'll do the next one. I'll do the next one,"
Mhm.
because I would chicken out.
Yep.
So I was fearful, I was scared, was really fearful of losing money,
Yeah.
you know? And, what happened was, I think it was 2018 or so, I kept saying, "Brandy, this is the year. Like, this is the year you're gonna do it. This is your you're gonna flip your first house or start buying rental income, portfolios." And I, had a client that was referred to me, and I went and I toured their home. And these clients, bless their heart, he had a medical issue. He was on dialysis, and the house was more of a hoarder house. It
Sure.
was in quite disarray. They needed money to be able to transition into a better living situation, more of a ranch style home, something smaller. They needed money from their house to be able to help fund some of his medical treatments. And I thought, you know what? This is the house. This is the house
Mhm.
that I could help them out. Maybe it's a win win.
Yeah.
They had to buy another house, but they had to sell this one first.
Okay.
And when you go into some homes that aren't show ready, it's challenging when you need the profits from that home to
Right.
get into another house. So I thought, you know what? Let me make him an offer on this. If I do that, we're under contract, and then he doesn't, essentially need to be contingent to something
Exactly.
else. Well, I started going through the numbers. I was scared. I was scared of the numbers. I was scared of the money,
Mm.
to renovate it. So I had about 40,000 kind of tucked away from commissions. Wasn't a lot. I talked to a hard money lender,
Okay.
and they were like, "Hey, well, we'll give you the loan for this,
For the purchase of the home?
for the purchase of the home."
Okay.
They gave me the money to renovate it as well,
Okay.
but I was scared to use all of their money, So I got a loan for that amount, and then I held some money aside, and then I chickened out.
Mm.
I was like, "You know what?" At the time, your standard commission, I was like, "That'll work." And it's probably a $250,000 home in the condition it was in. Ran my numbers. I thought, "Man, it would be a great house to renovate, but I'll just make my commission on it," which was about 9 grand,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
9 grand compared to 50,000 is what I had factored that I would make as, renovating the property.
Kinda your margin on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then they called me because I asked them, I was like, "Well, what's your bottom number? What's your bottom price?" And they gave me a number, and I was like, "Eh." And so he calls me and he goes, "Hey, Brandy, we actually had one of these We Buy Ugly House home investor
Sure.
companies come in, and we're just going to sell it to them."
Oh, no.
So not only am I not getting the deal to renovate it because I'm scared,
Yeah.
I'm not even getting to sell it. So now I'm making nothing on this deal.
And they're gonna get actually probably taken yeah,
Yeah,
and
taking
taken advantage
advantage of.
of.
So I thought, well, what's the number? And he told me the number. And I'm like, okay, that's not the number you told me. This is like 40 grand less than the number you told me he would take. So I said, tell you what, I'm going to give you more money.
Mm.
So I offered them more because I knew that their numbers probably weren't wrong. These We Buy Ugly House
Yeah.
people. And I was like, okay, I feel good with their number.
Sure.
So I added extra and I said, and instead of you having to be out of your home in 10 days and having to be displaced, I said, what I'll do is I'll make it so I'm under contract. We will find you a house.
Mm.
So whether you find something in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, you'll have the security of knowing that this house is under contract. So they loved it because they weren't displaced. They had the freedom and flexibility to, look at another property, and they were making more money on the sale. Plus, they
Exactly.
didn't have to have people come to their home.
Yeah.
It wasn't in a condition to have people walking through. And they had a lot of pets, and it wasn't a safe property to walk
Mhm.
your clients through. So I went under contract, and then that's when I was like, "Okay, I gotta find, the money." I had also taken a HELOC out on my home just to be able to have that as a safety, buffer.
Mm.
But that's how I got started, and then I did my first, property. I think I made, either like 35 or 40,000
On
on
that one
it.
you just told us about?
Yeah,
Okay.
but, it was a lot better than the 9 grand that I thought I was gonna make.
Absolutely, that you almost lost
That I
completely.
almost lost, yeah, it was
Yeah,
better than the $0
exactly.
on the
Well,
blank.
I love that story because a couple things I heard were you didn't really have the courage initially to pull the trigger, but then when they came in to take that
Yeah,
deal from you, it instantly moved you into action. And it was almost like that fear of losing the $9,000 was stronger than the gain of making the 30 or 40,
yeah,
and that instantly, like, pushed you over the line.
it did, and I'm so glad. It's ripping off the Band-Aid.
Exactly.
Anything you try for the first time is gonna be scary, and I finally got to a point in my life where the fear of regret,
Mm,
the fear of not trying, the fear of wondering, "What if?" was outweighing the actual action
yeah,
to do the thing. And so for me, any point in my business, it's always been where I've hit the ceiling and I've had that fear. You're just
interesting.
like sweating.
Yeah,
You're so nervous. And sometimes we look at that fear and we go, oh, well, maybe that's God telling us not to do it, or it's closing a door. And I'm like, you know what? Doors were meant to be open. I was
that's
like, you
right.
gotta sometimes put your hip, you gotta put your shoulder into it and get it open. Sometimes you gotta pry it open. And so I don't think that, every obstacle that we face is always a closed door,
Right.
because nothing in life worth anything is easy, right?
That's right.
There's no comfort in growth, all the sayings that we hear. And it's like, no, you've got to push forward and you've got to do the thing, you know?
And eventually, you gotta put yourself out there to get what you want. I heard something last night that fear is a belief too. That as people of faith, we choose to believe, and the same is true for fear. It's like we're choosing to believe
Right.
either way.
Right. And, I always put myself mentally, hey,
Mhm.
if I'm on my deathbed or at the end of my life, when am I going to look back and go, I wish I would have,
Yeah.
should have, could have. And this was one of those defining moments.
Mm.
I was like, Brandy, you've prepared for this. You're not going in blindly. You're using wisdom. You're using your skills. You're using the knowledge that you've gained. And yet sometimes we're professional students,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
And that is a big hindrance too. Sometimes we try to gain all this knowledge, or we attend all the classes, we listen to all the podcasts, we do all the things. And then when presented with an opportunity, we don't take it or we don't jump on it. Or we hear the things and we don't prepare ourselves. And so when that opportunity comes, you're scrambling. Well, how do I find the money?
Mhm.
It's like, unfortunately, we move a lot. Well, I enjoy moving. My husband doesn't. And he's like, "You get one more move." But, it's even getting your house ready, your house in order, prepared. So when that opportunity comes, it's like, can I list my house? Can I sell it? Or do I have to do all the different things to get it prepared for the next, move, the next step? And so that's something that I've been really intentional, about, is being knowledgeable, but also, taking the action with it.
Yeah, and being prepared so you can,
Yeah.
sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've failed on that too a lot. There's a lot of opportunities. There's some great opportunities that I missed because in my head, I was thinking about how great it would be, but I wasn't doing the prep work
Yeah.
to be able to handle that next opportunity that came my way. I mean, if I had, gosh, I'd be retired. I would be talking to you on like FaceTime at the beach or something at my, other homes.
But hey, that's all part of our story too. Well,
It is.
speaking of failure, walk us through, one of your more challenging transactions or deals, investments, something that was just like, "Oh, this one was a nightmare."
Well, gosh, you know what? I will say I am conservative. I'm
Sure.
pretty conservative. So Some of my biggest failures are the opportunities I probably missed out on
Yeah.
that I didn't do. I had a couple chances to buy like subdivisions and develop them out that I didn't do,
Mm.
that someone else did, and the market hit right. I mean,
Mm.
they're sitting pretty.
I'm sure.
I think some of my biggest challenges that I've had, again, were just, yeah, opportunities that I missed out on. I will say, when you're renovating properties or doing investments, I have bitten off more than I can chew a few times,
Mhm.
especially when the market has shifted. One of the biggest things that I've had to kind of dial back was in my investment career, taking on more properties or buying more rentals or or pushing through and then not having the systems in place to handle it. So I lost money because of, holding costs or not having the crews, or I didn't look at my numbers as well because I thought, "Oh, I know this. It's fine. I know what I'm doing." And I don't wanna say there was arrogance in it, but I definitely didn't use wisdom, in a checks and balance system
Sure.
because I was looking ahead. "Oh, the market's doing really well," especially after COVID, 2021,
Yeah. It gave a
22.
great little run.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you could fake it,
You really
you
could.
could, and you'd be making money
Yeah.
as an agent, as an investor, and then the market shift, the interest rates. I had, tried a couple of the BRRRR methods,
Mm.
where I bought properties cash, and then I was renovating them because I was gonna hold them, and interest rates went up. So when I bought it until I renovated and had to refinance the property, we went from a 3% interest rate to 6.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference on our show, right?
Totally changed for cash flow.
They do change, yes. I did buy a couple properties. I bought one that was a 125-year-old property. I just sold it. I did my first reverse 1031 exchange on it, and everything was just wrong,
Mm.
And no matter how many things I fixed on it or renovated, there was always something, that was popping up.
The one more thing.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, I need to be more intentional on my buy box. Okay, what are my goals? And one thing we did is, we started this investment club, this
Yeah.
investment group. And a lot of it was to say, hey, what can we do outside of a standard commission?
Exactly.
We have this ability to be like an inside trading
Exactly.
with real
'Cause
estate.
we have our pulse on the market. We know what's
Oh, yeah.
happening. We see the numbers. We're like, "Oh, I can buy it for this. We can sell it for that. Here's the
Mhm.
margin."
Yeah, and so, with the investment group, we're able to surround ourselves with like-minded people,
Mhm.
and a lot of it was bringing in speakers because we don't teach, the
No.
class. I have a handful of things I could talk about, and yet there's people that are experts in all these fields
Absolutely.
that we would be bringing in,
Sure.
and I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." So we would just pick topics of things that we wanna learn about,
Yeah.
oil and gas or syndications or storage units or whatever the case is. And the thing that I love about it is it opens my mind to different investment strategies. Hard money loans. Well, how am I the lender now instead of borrowing all the money?
Right.
Like I mentioned to you, off camera, I thought it was great to be a realtor, which it is.
Yeah.
And then I moved into the role of an investor and I was like, oh, this is great. And everything has its pros and cons, right?
Sure.
And then I thought, "Oh, well, being the banker, well, that's really where it's at,"
Yeah, it's easy.
It is.
There's no toilets,
Yeah,
but there's people.
there is people. That's the one thing. Oh
Like,
my god.
there's always people.
I love people and I don't. I think when you asked earlier, one thing I loved about investment side is I don't have to deal with people as much.
Mhm. That's true.
And for me, my investment has been shifting a lot into my family,
Yeah.
my kids, my husband, my marriage. The things that sometimes we neglect, that I was maybe neglecting because I was so focused on business, because that ended up being where I felt fulfilled in my life,
Exactly.
was the security of making money, and that was fulfilling kind of the need to keep growing in
Mhm.
business, and I had to take a step back and look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm missing it. I'm missing my children. growing up, working on my marriage. And so that was a big, shift for me and really how I am showing up now in my business and what I choose to do.
And focusing on those right things versus the next dollar.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes, as successful entrepreneurs, it's hard not to keep chasing after that next goalpost. And we realize as you look back, like, oh, I missed all that time that I can't get back.
Yeah. One of the great things with stepping into the investment side for me, because I am not the realtor, I'm not the agent that enjoys, all the client events, and I think it's great. And if I could say one of my biggest weaknesses is I kind of was more of a, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Instead of getting help and leveraging, I'm not the most patient as far as a teacher. I love to share information and help people, but walking alongside people, I just don't have the patience for that. That's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I have patience for my kids and my husband, and that's like the extent of it. And so I love the investment side because I could really take some of that mental stress
Mhm.
off of me.
And that emotional piece with your clients too. It's like this is their forever thing, and sometimes they don't understand it like
Mm,
we do, and navigating their emotions
yes.
can be.
Which, I mean, I do love. I love to help
Oh, and you're
people,
so good at that.
and yet it was such an emotional toll and draining.
Yeah.
I recharge by being by myself. I don't recharge by being out in a group of people. My husband's the opposite. He
Yeah.
loves it. I don't,
Yeah.
And so for me, the investment side allowed me to work during the week.
Mm.
I rarely work evenings or weekends, and if I do, it might be a Saturday for a few hours, but I could count on one hand the amount of times I've had to do that.
To actually, yeah, jumping in.
Mhm. And, we were able one of the things we do is we have a little lake house, on Table Rock Lake, and so one of my husband's stipulations is, "Hey, if we do this, you can't use it as a rental,
Mhm.
property as an investment or an Airbnb, a short-term rental." He goes, "Because I know you, and you'll say, 'Hey, if we go down this weekend, it's gonna end up costing us $1,000 or something of what we could make in profit.'" So, he's like, "Hey, we could do this." But it's really about slowing down. It's really
Mhm.
about our family. It's spending time, making memories and the experiences. And that has been something that all the hard work and
Yeah.
has been able to allow us to do. It was funny because our kids, they just turned 9. We have twins, boy girl twins. And I was like, man, we have maybe 9 summers
Hmm.
left. And this is before,
And you know what? Are
that's
13,
the
14, they're gonna wanna bring a boyfriend, girlfriend, some
hopefully not a 13 Ginevra.
well, 14,
But yeah,
15, yeah, for sure.
yes. Bringing their friends
Somebody.
or their first time,
Mhm.
jobs and things like that. And I'm like, gosh, we only have this many more summers.
Yeah,
And it really puts it into perspective,
yeah.
because when they were younger, I did not enjoy infancy stages of kids at all. Um, the more independent they've got, the more fun it's been,
Sure.
but it does, it goes by so fast.
Hmm.
And I thought, man, this is never going to end. They have the saying, the days are long, but the years are short. And now the years are they're starting to fly by.
Just like that.
Hmm. So yeah, that's really been my goal is what can I do to establish more generational wealth,
Yeah.
a legacy? What am I doing to educate myself? With the investment club, it was great because it opened my eyes and a lot of others, podcasts like this of saying, hey, what else is out there? Things we never would have thought of
Right.
before, but then it's taking the action and also when not to take action because sometimes you hear all these ideas. And I know us as agents,
Oh, we're bad, right? Shiny object. Let me try it.
squirrel.
Exactly.
Yes. And it's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to try this. And I've done that,
Sure. Same.
and yet I've done it on a smaller scale to go, okay,
Yeah.
at least I know how to pivot. And at least I know enough to say, okay, well, maybe this, I'm going to refine my wheelhouse. And what I've learned is every big investor or really successful investor, they look at their numbers and they know when to pivot.
Mhm.
Not everyone starts with the home run,
Exactly.
right?
A lot of singles.
A lot of singles. And I think sometimes we feel like everything has to be a home run, or we hear people tell their
Mhm.
stories and they only share the home runs.
Right.
And it's like, gosh, there's a lot of struggle.
There are.
Everything worth anything in life takes patience, growth, time, you know,
Yeah.
and to give yourself grace for that learning curve.
And that journey that you're really on, big picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to realize, I'm not just stuck at today. Here's where I'm going and here's what's going to happen next, and giving yourself that bigger perspective too.
Yeah. I know in a lot of hard moments in life, we had a difficult moment just having kiddos. Our
Yep.
kids, we ended up doing IVF numerous times, and that was a long path. And I was focused on that a lot, during that time period. But my mom, she would always tell me, she's like, you just have to remember this too shall pass.
Mm,
This is just a season,
that's right.
right? And when you're in those seasons and you're in those valleys, it's very hard sometimes to look ahead and see the future, to see the good times.
Mhm.
It's easy to get stuck in those moments.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would just say, it's like I can do anything for 2 years or just give myself a timeline, and it's not always going to be like this.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's the financial struggles,
Sure.
the business struggles. It's that project that went south. I mean, I have a project right now, the market's shifted, and it's my first renovation that has not sold or moved.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there.
Yep.
I'm like, oh my
No,
gosh.
I've got one too. I'm guilty. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you're like, okay. And it's bound to happen.
Sure, it will.
Um, but yeah, you go through that and not everything's a home run.
Yep. I think it's important to realize it's hard in those moments where you're like, "What? This is so hard. This is so challenging." But those moments that really make us great are usually in the biggest valleys in life. And you can
Mm-hmm.
see them when you're farther ahead. Every great thing that probably happened, in my life and in yours happened because of who we had to become in the pit, you know? And it wasn't because it was so easy, like our 20 to 2025 run. It's because of those challenges that really force you to become better than you are.
It's that refining fire,
Mhm.
you know?
Absolutely.
It's yeah, that constant it produces that fruit and that growth. And so I think a lot of times it's realizing and I don't know where I would be if I grew up. I mean, there's times where I was like, man, I wish I just grew up in some wealthy family, I had normal vacations and all that and a great house and stuff. And then I think, I wonder where I would be.
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily good or bad, right or wrong, but I think of I probably would have had a little bit more complacency,
Mhm.
for myself,
For sure.
or thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna get my degree, which again, there's nothing wrong with higher education. And yet, I think unless you're gonna be a doctor or an attorney or something like that, it's
Absolutely.
like, hey, there's so many other things that
What's the
you can
ROI on that? You're right.
right do. And if I had gone that route, I wonder where life would be. And so I
Mhm.
am grateful for those in hindsight. And now that I look back on, the many struggles growing up, and I'm like, you know what, I can see the fruit and the reward. And so where it's led me now too is just again that legacy for my family, not
Mm.
only in just the quality of our time together, the investment in our future, but financially, what are we doing to set that up,
Yeah.
to build that legacy? And it's more than just flipping houses or buying real estate or
Have you guys come to any conclusions on what that might look like for you?
well, a lot of it's just kind of the unfun things that you do,
Yeah.
setting up your estate plans and
Mhm.
wills and trusts and we do different like insurance policies and learning about all of that and notes and stuff and implementing it. My husband jokes, I'm always having him sign papers for something. He's like, "Whoops." And bless his heart, he lets me do my thing.
Well,
I used to get upset because he wasn't really involved, you know? And then he's like, "Well, Brandi," he goes, "I trust you." He goes, "You know what you're doing. This is your wheelhouse, and I trust you." He's like, "So I can help, but I probably will say no to things because I just don't understand them,
Yeah.
you know?" But he's been able to be educated and come alongside,
And is willing to too.
yeah, which is really great.
Yeah.
You know,
There's a lot of people out there whose partners are so apprehensive and
they are. And so that's what I tell people. If you're married or have your partner that, do these things together, come to at least the education, the classes, the training together, because they're so much more open-minded than if I just show up and I start spouting off to my husband, "Hey, we need to do this and do that." I've come to a point, I don't care. I don't care how he gets the information or who tells him,
yeah.
as long as we're on the same page. It doesn't have to come from me at all, you know? And we have a running joke. I'll tell him something and then it kind of falls flat. And then someone else will say something. And then he's like, "Oh my gosh, we should do this or that." I just smile. I'm like, "Yep, you're right. Like, let's keep moving forward, you know? Just
Absolutely.
keep moving forward." There's too many things in life that will drag you down or get you to look at the past, and to dwell on that. And so I'm just always about, hey, let's just keep focusing on the future.
And those next right steps. I love that.
Mhm.
Well, Brandy, tell me a little bit. Can you give us some advice if somebody's like, you know what, I want to jump into investing, but I have no idea. I was like you, never done it before. What advice would you give somebody just jumping into their first transaction, their first deal?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, if you're looking at the investment world, truly is education. Find
Mhm.
something that you're interested in, whether it's maybe rentals, flipping properties is great. That is not necessarily the wealth building piece that's making the income to invest it in
That's right.
something.
It's another job, right?
It is, it's a job. However, it allows you the income to put into your investments. The biggest thing for me was to get around like-minded people,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's your brokerage that focuses on investing, other agents, some type of group to really sharpen and to be a sounding board. So take the time to learn, connect, network with people. One of the things we do is we do a happy hour after our group sessions. And I'm introverted, so I normally don't like that stuff. I'm like, let me just get the material and go.
Sure.
And the networking piece has opened up doors to so many things for contacts, banking relationships, contractor relationships. It's been huge. But I would say find that group to be involved with and then to take action. Be prepared. Start preparing yourself. So you might not have a flip or a rental property or,
Mhm.
a syndication. Find out what those things are. Listen to podcasts like this. Find that information. There's so many great tools out there that you can educate yourself on and then just start diving into that world, and then take that first step.
That first little put your toe in.
Yeah.
Learning, I mean, it's so powerful, and with our world today, there's no I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, you could chat GPT the deal, like, the numbers of any property out there to kinda give it an overflow, which you and I never had any access to,
Oh,
5, 6 years ago when
no, which was probably good in a
exactly, I
way.
know, right?
Then
Put
we
put them all in it.
Yeah, I did. I tried, Chat GPT. I was trying to pick out designing, like colors. People always ask me for colors. I'm like, I hate looking at colors. I will say they got it very wrong, and I had to, I was correcting.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this is not what this is, and stuff. But they do have some great ideas, and that's been another thing for me since I was a child of the '80s.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there's many times I just want to be on a farm,
Mhm.
like have chickens and stuff and my husband's like, "We would do that for 2 weeks," and he'd be like, "What's the meaning of life?" Because you feel like you'd have to get back out there and do something, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's true."
I love
But
it.
yeah.
Okay, well, I wanna switch lanes on you. I wanna jump into our lightning round, okay?
Oh, Lord, okay.
Yep. So these are just, like, 15-second answers, don't overthink it,
Okay.
okay? What is a small ritual that keeps you grounded every day? Something you do for yourself, keeps you grounded.
Cold brew coffee.
I love it. Cold brew coffee.
It's getting up. I get up 6 o'clock,
Okay.
not that early, but I get up, I have my routine, I do my devotional,
Yep.
exercise, and then start the kids off.
Okay. What's your favorite book, podcast on real estate investing or real estate in general?
So I do like Bigger Pockets,
Mhm.
and then I've been listening to, Ed Milet,
Oh, yes.
Mel Robbins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, those are good. So if you had to rebuild, start all over again from 0, what would your first 3 moves be?
So for total real estate,
Yep, for total
okay,
real estate.
I would be involved. Well, I'm going to make a plug for this office, but I would be involved with an office. I would get on a team. 'Kay, I tried it by myself too long. And then I would make sure that the office or team has some type of investment, if that's what you're into,
Yep.
community.
Okay. Community. I love
Mhm.
it. And what would you agents that are in that messy middle section, what advice would you give them from your perspective right now?
I would meet with someone who's where you're at
Mhm.
and someone who's above where you're at in your business. I would seek advice, seek counsel. It's okay to reach out and get help.
I love that. Well, Brandy, any last words, anything you wanna share, advice you wanna give, final thoughts you wanna leave, our viewers today with?
I would say the biggest thing is be intentional about what you're doing and why you're doing it, next 5, 10, 15 years. And again, for me, it was freedom.
Yeah.
It was all about freedom. The financial issues our family had growing up, that security equals freedom. Relationships, they are important. If you're in a relationship or you have a family, you've committed to that
Yeah.
because you have it,
That's
whether
right.
you like it or not, right?
Right.
And for me, realizing that everything that I do is freedom for, them. What's my purpose in life? I'm a spiritual person. So it's like, well, okay, God, use me. What is it? And I've gotten off track on that a lot because I've let a lot of the things of, family, day to day life, business get in the way. And it's a renewed sense of, okay, what is your real purpose in life? What are you here for? How are you making an impact,
Yeah.
eternally? Because time is short, life is short. And a lot of times I've found that I've done things for myself more, but really being selfless.
Mm.
That's been the word we've been talking about, selflessness. And when you can die to yourself and you start thinking of, the people around you in life and really an attitude of service and being a servant's heart, it's interesting how things start shifting a
Mhm.
lot. Things start getting easier.
That's right.
So just to put that into perspective and really give it some thought of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
I love that. Knowing your purpose, knowing who you are, where you're going, and focusing on the right things that are most important. I love that. Well, if Brandy, if anyone wants to reach out to you, get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I would say email me.
Okay.
It's shoemakerbrandy@gmail.com. ShoemakerBrandi at gmail.com. You can also reach out to the office.
Sure.
Would be great. But yeah, that way it's on there, it's documented, text messages and stuff.
Sure.
Well, I'm old school.
I love it. Email me.
Yeah, email me.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Brandy. We appreciate it. Love hearing your story and love being a part of the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.